I rented a room in my old friend's family home last summer. I thought it would inspire my writing. The house sat alone at the end of a long, twisted driveway. It felt familiar but also cold and uninviting. Dust covered the furniture. I thought the quiet would help me focus, but the place gave me chills. On my first night, the storm rolled in. Rain hammered the windows. I opened my laptop, but the sound of the rain was interrupted by something else. At first, it was faint, just some tapping. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was branches outside. But the tapping had its own rhythm, and it scared me. My heart raced. I thought about checking, but I dismissed the idea. I needed to write. The storm continued, and the tapping grew louder. Each time, it felt like it wanted my attention. I gripped the edge of the table, unease creeping in. Maybe I was just tired, I told myself. I didn't want to be paranoid. Just then, I heard murmurs. Soft voices echoed through the walls. I blinked and listened harder. I could only make out the sound of running water and rain. It felt like the house was alive, breathing against the storm. Still, I pushed on with my writing, but every time I concentrated, the tapping and whispers pulled me away. That next day, I decided to explore. I walked through the dim rooms, trying to shake off the weird feelings. It was strange how everything felt like a ghost. Old photographs caught my attention. They were of a family, but my friend wasn't in any of them. My stomach turned as I turned one over. There were no signs of him anywhere. I felt unsettled. The photographs seemed to watch me, judging me perhaps. I glanced around, catching shadows at the periphery of my vision. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. Maybe I was imagining things. I wanted to write, but my inspiration vanished. The house felt heavier with every passing hour. More nights passed. Each one melted into the next, dragging with them the sound of rain and whispers. Then, one stormy evening, I heard the tapping again. This time, I was overwhelmed, heart pounding against my chest. I couldn't focus. Was it the weather, or was it something else in the house? Then I heard a voice, clear as day. My name. I turned, my blood ran cold. The room around me felt like ice. I looked toward the window. Nothing was there, just darkness and falling rain. What did that mean? My mind spun, trapped in confusion. I stood frozen, caught in the grip of fear. What was this place trying to tell me? I felt compelled to uncover it. I had to confront whatever was lurking in those shadows. I didn't understand what was happening, but it didn't feel right. The storm raged on, and so did the whispers. I needed to know what waited for me outside that house. I couldn't shake the fear that gripped me. I paced in my room, trying to gather strength. The tapping continued, persistent and unnerving. I felt it in my bones. I had to get to the bottom of this. I took a deep breath and made my way down the narrow hallway. I glanced at the photographs again, their silent judgment weighing heavily on me. Each frame felt off like they were hiding secrets. I reluctantly walked toward the front door. Outside, the rain had eased a bit, just a gentle patter. I stepped onto the porch, and the chill hit me. The air felt different, almost charged. As I walked along the path leading to the garage, I spotted an old, rusty toolbox beside the door. I hadn't noticed it before. My instincts told me it was important. With shaking hands, I opened it. Inside were ragged tools and an old leather-bound notebook. Curiosity overpowered my fear, and I pulled out the notebook first. The leather was cracked, but it felt almost warm as I opened the cover. The pages were yellowed, filled with cramped handwriting. I scanned the first few entries, noting the strange sketches and notes. They described odd events and eerie occurrences happening in the house, things like flickering lights, whispers at night, and shadows seen darting through the rooms. I gulped. Had my friend known about this? As I turned a few pages, I stopped. There was a drawn map. It looked like the house layout, with a big red X marked at a spot labeled the basement. A tight knot formed in my stomach. I hadn't explored the basement yet. Was this where the tapping came from? What was supposed to be down there? Just then, another thunderclap echoed, shaking me from my thoughts. I closed the notebook, my heart racing again. I thought about the stories I'd read, the things I'd encountered. I had to confront this. Whatever was in the basement needed to be faced. I walked toward the basement door, feeling the weight of the house pressing down on me. The tapping grew louder as I descended the creaking stairs, the dim light barely illuminating my path. I reached for the doorknob, hesitating. What was waiting for me behind that door? I opened it slowly, and the smell of mildew hit me. Inside, darkness enveloped me completely. I switched on a small light, and my breath caught in my throat. Old furniture, boxes, and an eerie silence greeted me. Then I saw something move in my peripheral view. I turned quickly, but it was gone. Just shadows. My pulse raced. There was no going back now. I stepped further inside, the floorboards creaking beneath me. Then I spotted something on the floor that made my heart drop. That was when I saw it, a small, tarnished locket half buried under a pile of dust and garbage. I picked it up, my hands shaking. As I opened it, a wave of cold air swept through the room, leaving a thick silence hanging in the air. Inside was a photograph. A face I recognized but never expected to see again. It was my friend's face, but something was terribly wrong. I felt a chill run through me. Why did I find this here? Then, without warning, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, trying to turn on the flashlight. I could hear a low whispering growing louder. What was coming next? The flashlight flickered to life, casting a narrow beam across the basement. Shadows stretched and twisted, morphing into unfamiliar shapes. I shuddered, gripping the locket tightly. The whispers surrounded me, muffled echoes that came from every direction. My heart raced. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer came, only more whispers. They seemed to call my name, each repetition more urgent than the last. I took a tentative step forward, the floor creaking beneath me, and steeled myself against the rising panic. Suddenly, I heard it again, a low thud. It reverberated through the room, pulling my attention toward the far corner. Hesitantly, I moved closer, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. I used the light to scan the walls. Images from the notebook flashed in my mind, the descriptions of unseen things, of an unsettling presence. Then, I spotted something jutting out from behind a stack of boxes. My pulse quickened. It was a small door, barely noticeable against the grime. There was no handle, just a latch, rusted and barely hanging on. The whispers grew louder, almost pleading. I reached for the latch, my fingers trembling. As I pulled it open, a gust of stale air rushed past me. I felt a presence, something intangible yet heavy, pressing against my back. I paused, the whispers intensifying. They swirled around me like an unseen storm, threatening to pull me in. What lay behind that door? My mind raced with possibilities, but my curiosity was stronger than my fear. I swallowed hard and stepped inside. The small chamber was barely illuminated by the beam of my flashlight. What I saw made my breath hitch. Old, fragmented furniture, a broken mirror, clothes piled high, none of it looked familiar. My heart raced again as I scanned the room, and then something caught my eye. At the far end was a large trunk, heavily locked and worn down by time. I walked closer, wiping the dust off the surface. There were strange symbols carved into the wood, and they matched some of the sketches in the notebook. As I leaned in to get a better look, I heard a loud crash from above, like something had fallen in the house. The walls shook slightly, and the whispers fell silent. I jumped back, adrenaline flooding my senses. Panic gripped me again. I need to get out of here, I thought, but another part of me urged to see what was in the trunk. I had to know. Before I could question myself any further, I was already wrestling with the lock, searching the area for something, anything to pry it open. The whispers returned, softer this time, almost rhythmic, like a lullaby. I couldn't tell if they were supportive or warning me. Then, out of nowhere, I saw movement in the corner of my eye. My stomach dropped. Someone or something was in the corner of the room, watching me. I turned quickly, the flashlight beam swinging wildly. "Who is there?" I shouted into the darkness. But there was nothing, only silence, thick and suffocating. I felt the air grow colder as dread washed over me. My instincts screamed that I was not alone, but I needed to keep going. The trunk loomed before me, and I steadied my hands. If I didn't uncover the truth now, I might never have another chance. With a final deep breath, I grabbed a metal tool from the floor, aimed it at the lock, and struck. As the metal clanged, the whispers rose once more, growing chaotic. Whatever was in that trunk might change everything, or it could be the end of me. Just as I prepared for another strike, the lights snapped back on, flooding the basement with brightness. I gasped, stunned by the sudden switch. But it didn't calm the feeling of eyes watching me. Something had shifted in the air as I realized, I was not alone anymore. The brightness blinded me for a moment, washing over the basement and revealing every crack and crevice. My heart still raced, but the light helped clear the shadows I had imagined. The whispers were silenced, but the eerie feeling lingered. I turned slowly, shining the flashlight around the room. Nothing moved. The trunks, broken mirrors, and boxes of forgotten memories settled in quiet stillness. I took a cautious step back toward the trunk, my curiosity pushing me onward despite the unease. Then I noticed the broken mirror. It reflected my startled face, eyes wide with worry. I had been so focused on the trunk that I hadn't processed what else might lie in this hidden place. I approached the mirror, curious. What did it reflect besides my fear? As I leaned closer, I saw something behind me in the reflection. A shadow shifted at the periphery of my vision. I spun around, adrenaline flashing through me like ice water. There was nothing, just the faint outline of the door, still ajar. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling. "It's just the fear," I told myself. "Just your imagination." But deep down, I knew better. I could feel an energy in the room, an intensity that hadn't been there before. The air was thicker, almost charged. Returning to the trunk, I surveyed the lock again. It loomed in front of me like a challenge. The symbols carved into the wood felt alive, as if they were whispering secrets I was too afraid to uncover. My hands moved to the tool, but I hesitated. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the stairs above, loud enough to rattle the space. My instincts jolted me into action. I dropped the tool, racing back toward the door. But just as I reached it, the door swung closed on its own, sealing the exit. Panic surged as I pulled on the latch, but it wouldn't budge. "Let me out!" I shouted, my voice echoing against the walls. I banged my fist on the door, desperation rising with each futile attempt. The whispers flared up again, swirling in a chaotic chorus. Then, I saw it. The reflection in the broken mirror showed a figure emerging from the shadows, a dark silhouette that didn't belong. My pulse quickened, and I turned, half expecting to confront whatever was behind me. But the room was empty. What was happening? My mind raced through all the tales I'd heard about this house, the stories that spoke of spirits trapped within its walls. Dread settled like a weight in my stomach. "Get it together," I whispered to myself. I had to face this. But as I turned back to the trunk, an overwhelming urge to run gripped me. I took another step toward the trunk, knowing I was close to unveiling something I wanted to ignore. The whispers morphed into a single voice, clearer and demanding. "Open it." I wanted to refuse to run from this place and never return. But before I could make a decision, the lights flickered again, plunging me into darkness for a heartbeat. Please, don't. But then, just as quickly, the lights returned. Only now, the trunk lay slightly ajar, an opportunity one didn't remember creating. I took a hesitant step forward, my heart thumping. Then everything went cold. The whispers ceased, and an intense silence blanketed the room. Cautiously, I leaned closer to the trunk, my hands shaking. What lay within could ruin everything I thought I knew. I needed to know what this house was hiding. As I reached out, I hesitated. Was this a mistake? I took a deep breath and opened the trunk. I lifted the lid of the trunk carefully, anxiety churning in my stomach. The creaking wood sounded like a warning. Inside, wrapped in tattered cloth, was something I hadn't expected, a collection of old photographs, faded to sepia with time. I froze, my breath hitching as I pulled one out. The image showed a family. They looked happy, smiling in front of the very house I stood in. Something about their eyes felt unsettling, as if they held secrets I wasn't meant to uncover. I glanced around the room, expecting it to echo with the distant laughter of those captured in the photo. Instead, the silence enveloped me like a shroud. I reached for another photograph. This one showed a woman, perhaps from the same family, gazing intently at the camera. There was sadness in her eyes, and I felt a chill run down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to stop, to close the trunk and leave this place behind. Yet, curiosity clung to me like a shadow. Then I saw something else nestled underneath the photos. It was a small, rusted key. My heart raced as I picked it up, turning it over in my palm. It felt heavier than it looked, like it held more meaning than just opening something. The whispers returned, now a subtle echo, nudging me toward a decision. Where does it fit? I whispered aloud. In that moment, I heard a sound from above, like heavy footsteps pacing. I froze again, adrenaline spiking. Someone or something was in the house. My mind scrambled, desperately trying to reason with what was happening. The footsteps stopped, and a heavy silence fell over the basement. I swallowed hard, torn between the fear of being found and the fear of the unknown lingering in the trunk. I glanced at the photographs one more time, feeling the weight of their gaze on me. This time, I caught sight of a name handwritten on the back of one photo. Margaret, 1932. It was as if she was calling out to me, pleading for acknowledgement. Who are you? I asked the empty space, but the air remained still, unresponsive. I pocketed the key instinctively. A sense of urgency swept over me. I needed to find out what it unlocked, and the need to escape grew stronger with every tick of my racing heart. I took a step back toward the door. But as I moved, the room suddenly shifted. The shadows deepened, twisting into grotesque shapes, and the temperature dropped sharply. The door loomed before me but felt impossibly far away. Then, the whispers crescendoed into urgent pleas. Stay. Discover. Unravel. My breath quickened. No. I shouted, overwhelmed. I have to go. But another part of me, a part that longed for answers, urged me to stay. The darkness felt alive, pulsating with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Finally, I hesitated at the edge of the trunk again, grappling with my decision. Maybe there was something left behind that could help me understand. I turned back to it, the photographs shimmering as if alive in the waning light. That S when I saw it, the family from the first photo appeared to shift, their expressions warping from smiles to something darker, almost menacing. I stepped back, horrified. The shadows grew longer, creeping closer as the footsteps resumed above, now more frantic, like something wanted to make its way down to me. They were footsteps that didn't belong to the house, and dread filled my lungs. I had to act quickly. But what lay behind the basement door? I clutched the key tighter in my hand, the true purpose of my discovery prowling just beyond the dark. I bolted for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The echoes of footsteps above were relentless, a reminder that I wasn't alone. Steeling myself, I twisted the knob and pushed. The door screamed in protest, but opened just enough for me to slip through into the dim hallway. I glanced back. The trunk loomed in the shadows, a dark gaping mouth that promised more secrets. But there was no time for hesitation. The smell of musty wood and dampness filled the hallway, making it hard to breathe. I swallowed hard and moved forward, careful to keep my footfalls light. The floor creaked under me, each step echoing into the stillness. I reached the staircase that led to the first floor. The footsteps had stopped, but the oppressive silence was just as terrifying. I hesitated, unsure if I should keep going or hunker down somewhere. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper, faint but clear, lingering in the air like a forgotten melody. "Help her!" I stopped, a chill running down my spine. "Help who?" I whispered, glancing around. But no one answered. The shadows hung heavy, a dark curtain hiding whatever lurked within. I had to know what that whisper meant, but dread clawed at my insides. I crept up the staircase, gripping the banister as I ascended slowly. The wood felt cold beneath my fingers, sending shivers racing through me. At the top, I stopped and surveyed the hallway. It branched off to various rooms, each one shrouded in darkness, each one possibly hiding its own secrets. One room, at the end of the hall, had a sliver of light peeking beneath the door. I could feel an inexplicable pull toward it, like the key in my pocket was guiding me. An urge bloomed within me. What if the key could unlock that room? What if I could find answers? I approached the door, my breaths shallow and rapid. My hand hovered over the knob, hesitating. Then I remembered Margaret and the sorrowful gaze from the photograph. Maybe this was about her. Maybe I was meant to discover something important. I turned the knob slowly, the metallic click sounding louder than any heartbeat. The door swung open to reveal a small room that had once been a nursery. Faded wallpaper decorated the walls, adorned with animals I barely recognized. There was a crib dust-covered in the corner, and toys lay scattered across the floor, frozen in time. But it was the mirror above the dresser that drew my eye. In the reflection, a fleeting shadow crossed behind me. I whipped around, but the room was empty. My heart raced again. Perhaps it was just my imagination. I turned back, half expecting to see the shadow again, but instead, I saw something flash in the mirror. There was a figure standing behind me, a woman looking just like the one in the photograph. Dressed in a faded, shabby gown, her eyes locked onto mine, filled with both sorrow and urgency. I gasped, stumbling back. "Margaret?" I breathed. The mirror rippled as if reacting to my voice, and just like that, she vanished. But the air felt electric, heavy with meaning. The whispers returned, louder, urging me again. "Help her, please." I stared at the empty room, a rush of determination washing over me. I had to uncover the truth. I had to find out what happened to Margaret, or whatever it was this house wanted me to discover. My search was only beginning, and the darkness was waiting just behind my every move. I shook off the sense of dread and stepped further into the nursery. The dust stirred around my feet, motes of light dancing in the fading glow. The remnants of a child's room whispered of laughter and innocence, now a ghostly echo. My skin prickled as I approached the mirror, heart racing with a mix of fear and curiosity. What had I just seen? I needed to figure it out. I took a deep breath and ran my fingers along the dresser, scanning for anything out of place. The toys were worn but familiar, a teddy bear missing an eye, a rattle frozen in time. I picked up an old book from the floor. The Adventures of Peter Rabbit. Its pages were yellowed, edges tattered. I began flipping through it, nostalgia flooding my mind. But something caught my eye. One of the pages held a scrap of paper, folded neatly and tucked inside. I pulled it out, feeling the weight of it in my hands. Unfolding it, I saw a child's handwriting, shaky but clear. "Under the bed is where she sleeps, where secrets keep." A chill traveled through me. I glanced down at the crib in the corner, old and silent. The shadows beneath it seemed denser, almost alive. Should I? The whispers grew louder, a chorus of urgency pressing me forward. Before I could second-guess myself, I crouched down. The dust coated my fingers as I reached under the crib, and my heart raced the closer I got to the darkness. I felt something cool and solid. I grasped it tightly, and pulled it out, a small, wooden box, intricately carved, but worn at the edges. The box felt strangely heavy, as if holding memories. I had to know what was inside. As I opened it, I expected dust or forgotten toys, but instead saw several small trinkets, a locket, a faded photograph, and an odd key that looked like it belonged to another time. I noticed the locket first. My fingers trembled as I lifted it out. I recognized it immediately. It was identical to the one Margaret wore in the photograph. A wave of connection washed over me. I needed to find out who this woman was, and what had happened here. Suddenly, I heard a noise, a soft creak coming from the doorway behind me. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. "Who's there?" I called out, gripping the box tightly. My voice felt small in the vast silence. No answer came, but I could feel someone or something watching me. I turned slowly, half expecting to see an apparition or a shadowy figure. But the room remained empty. Fear coiled tightly in my stomach. I needed to leave. I placed the locket back into the box, turning away to head for the door. That's when I heard it again, a whisper, chilling and insistent, right next to my ear. "Help her." Without thinking, I bolted out of the room and down the hallway, heart pounding. I glanced back once more, half hoping to see Margaret, half terrified of something else altogether. But behind me, the nursery door stood closed, as if I had never entered at all. I stumbled back, adrenaline surging. I had to find a way to help her, but not knowing where to start only multiplied my fear. And just then, the whispers faded, leaving an unsettling silence. I clenched the box tighter, knowing that I was far from finished. What I had uncovered so far was only the beginning, and now I was more determined than ever. But the shadows were shifting, closing in. That dread was still there, a reminder that each step held deeper mysteries waiting for me just ahead. I couldn't shake the chill as I stumbled away from the nursery. My heart still raced, fueled by both fear and a strange resolve. I needed answers, and I couldn't let dread dictate how far I'd go. Outside, the rain had intensified, drumming against the windows like a heartbeat. It was almost comforting, the rhythm of it, but I couldn't let it distract me. I took the wooden box and headed to the living room, where the flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. I set the box on the coffee table and examined its contents again. The locket felt warm in my palm, as if it carried some lost energy. I flicked it open. Inside was a tiny photograph. The image was faded, but I could make out a woman, perhaps in her 20s, holding a baby. It wasn't Margaret, but there was a resemblance. Who was she? And who was the baby? The questions spiraled in my mind. I set the locket aside and picked up the faded photograph. On the back, someone had scrawled a name. Clara. I whispered it out loud, the name tasting foreign yet oddly familiar. What happened to Clara? Where were they now? As I pondered, something caught my eye outside. I glanced out the window. The rain formed tangled streams, and for a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing in the haze. I blinked, and the figure vanished. Panic sizzled in my veins. I forced myself to breathe. It was just the rain playing tricks on me. I turned back to the box, searching for more clues. As I flipped through the trinkets, the key grabbed my attention again. It seemed to hum with potential, but I had no idea what it opened. I put it in my pocket, feeling a sense of urgency. Maybe it led to answers, maybe it was something else entirely. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the house, rattling the walls. I jumped, heart racing. The sound had come from upstairs. My instinct screamed at me to run. But something inside pushed me forward. I had to confront whatever was happening. I climbed the staircase cautiously, each step creaking underneath my weight. The air was thick, and anticipation swirled around me. I reached the top and paused, listening intently. Footsteps echoed faintly down the hall. Was it real? Or was my mind playing tricks again? I moved slowly towards the sound, heart pounding. The hallway felt narrower, shadows stretching like fingers toward me. As I neared the end of the hall, the door to an empty room stood slightly ajar, and the footsteps abruptly stopped. I steadied myself, my breath shallow. Then, unexpectedly, the door swung open on its own. My heart dropped. Help her. It was the same whisper from before, spoken softer this time, as if it were calling me into the room. I hesitated at the entrance, peering inside but seeing nothing at all. Then, a soft giggle floated through the air. My gut twisted. I had to know. Just a few steps more, and I could see what lay within. But the shadows thickened around me, tugging at my resolve. That was when I caught sight of something on the floor, a glimmering object, half covered in darkness. I took a breath, stepping inside, knowing this was a moment I couldn't turn back from. My foot brushed against the object, and I knelt down to investigate. The glimmer revealed itself to be a small, intricately designed mirror. Despite the dim light, I could see an ornate frame, adorned with swirling patterns that felt almost alive. I picked it up, curiosity mixing with dread. As I turned the mirror in my hands, I caught a glimpse of something behind me. I spun around, heart racing. The room was empty, just as before, but the giggle drifted through the air again, echoing softly against the walls. "Who is there?" I called, trying to keep my voice steady. My stomach twisted at the uncertainty. Was it a trick of the mind? Or was there truly someone to fear? Silence responded, and for a brief moment, it felt like the world had paused. Then I heard footsteps again, but this time they were louder, more insistent. They seemed to beckon me forward. I gripped the mirror tightly, my knuckles white as I took a hesitant step deeper into the room. The giggle returned, but this time it was joined by a whisper, repeating the same phrase over and over, help her, my breath caught in my throat. I felt a pull toward the corner of the room, where the shadows gathered like an ominous fog. I cautiously approached, the floor creaking louder with each step. The air grew colder, stinging my skin. As I neared the corner, I noticed an old chest tucked away, half obscured by dust and debris. It looked ancient, adorned with the same swirling designs as the mirror. Instinctively, I reached for the key in my pocket. My fingers brushed the cool metal, igniting a flicker of hope. I squatted in front of the chest and examined the lock. It seemed to fit the key perfectly. My heart raced as I inserted it, twisting the metal carefully. With a soft click, the lock gave way, and I lifted the lid slowly. Inside was a trove of forgotten items, dresses, toys, and books piled haphazardly. But buried beneath them was something darker. A small, worn diary caught my attention, its cover stained and tattered. I pulled it out, trembling as I opened it. The pages were yellowed, filled with cramped handwriting. My eyes scanned the words, searching for context. The entries were dated, they told a story of fear and desperation. Clara spoke of a man who whispered in the night, who took things from her, including her baby. My blood ran cold. This was Clara's diary. The names blurred together as panic crept back into my chest. I couldn't ignore this. I had to know what happened to her and the baby. Just as I made sense of the words, the room darkened suddenly. Before I could react, the door slammed shut behind me. I jumped, and the mirror slipped from my grasp, shattering on the floor. The pieces glinted menacingly, each fragment reflecting a distorted version of reality. Then everything went quiet. A shadow moved in the corner of my eye. I turned slowly, heart pounding. I wasn't alone. The shadow solidified, forming into a figure and outline barely discernible from the darkness surrounding it. Fear washed over me, thick and suffocating. Was this Clara? Or something else altogether, something far more sinister? My instincts screamed that I should run, but I felt frozen in place, as if the air had thickened into something tangible, holding me back. "What do you want?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure shifted slightly, and I caught a glimpse of pale skin, dark hair framing a gaunt face. It was a woman, but her eyes were empty, void-like, and they stared into my soul. "Help her!" It was the same insistent whisper that had echoed through the house, now emanating from this apparition. My heart raced as I felt a mix of dread and compassion surge within me. This was Clara, or at least what remained of her. In that intimate stillness, the air thickened with desperation. I remembered the diary lying on the ground and how it spoke of loss and longing. "I want to help you," I said, the words frighteningly hollow. "But how?" The figure pointed towards the window, and that when I noticed the storm outside had intensified again. Heavy sheets of rain streaked down, obscuring everything. The tapping from the earlier nights returned, more feverish than before, a rhythmic echo against the glass as if begging for release. "Find the baby," she whispered, her voice a broken melody laden with sorrow. Find her. My mind raced. The key. It had to unlock something important. But what? I glanced around the chaos of the room, the echoes of laughter and despair all around. My eyes darted to the chest, to the remnants of Clara's life. There had to be more evidence of the baby's whereabouts. I took a deep breath and mustered the courage to search. "Where?" I asked, feeling the pressure of time close in. "Where is she?" But Clara's ghostly form faded momentarily, replaced by a wave of memories, images of the nursery, of toys, and perhaps something even more hidden and sinister. My pulse quickened as an idea formed in my mind. If this was about helping her baby, there had to be something left behind. I quickened my pace, rummaging through the chest, throwing aside remnants of a bygone era. I uncovered clothes, faded toys, but I also felt a weight shift in the air, the walls almost closing in as if they shared Clara's anguish. Something pulled at my gut, a sense I was on the brink of discovery. Then, beneath a pile of draped fabric, I felt something hard and unyielding, a small box, carved with intricate patterns, much like the mirror and the chest. With trembling fingers, I brushed the dust off and saw it was locked. Glancing back at Clara's shadow, still lingering around me, I wished for a glimpse of reassurance, for a sign to guide me through this fragile reality I existed within. I instinctively reached for the key, my heart drumming heavily in my chest, feeling it resonate with Clara's lingering presence. The metallic glint seemed to shine brighter as I delved deeper into the chest, forcing the lock to turn. The lid creaked open, and I gasped. A small, delicate locket rested inside, twinkling with a cold light. With trembling hands, I lifted the locket from its confinement. I opened it and gasped as a familiar face stared back at me. Clara herself, younger, vibrant, but with a tenderness that masked profound sorrow. The whispers grew louder, pooling around me like a relentless tide. "She sleeps under the floor," Clara implored. "Under the floor?" I breathed, urgency coursing through me as I glanced down. I realized the floorboards creaked more ominously in one part of the room, as if they were holding something back. The air felt electrified with questions, desperation, and fragmented memories. Without hesitating, I dropped to the floor and began to pry up the rotting boards. Splinters dug into my palms as I worked against the aged wood, revealing a narrow void beneath. Time felt suspended, every second stretching out and pulling at my soul. Finally, I uncovered a ledge, and beneath it lay something swathed in fabric, a bundle that could only be a child's blanket. My heart thudded against my ribs as I gingerly reached in, feeling the soft material beneath my fingers. What would I find? As I pulled it out, an overwhelming cold rushed through me, and the lights above flickered violently. I jerked back, fear flooding through my veins like ice. The room trembled. The momentary tremor was enough to jolt me into action. I had unearthed something crucial, something that could change everything. But before I could unfold the fabric, the sound of rushing water grew deafening, drowning out everything I'd been trying to grasp. Then, without warning, the apparition of Clara surged forward, stretching her arms out toward me. "Find her before it's too late." Her voice melded into the chaos, blending into explosive energy that swallowed the room as the shadows started to twist and roar. "Help me!" I shouted, staring into her despairing eyes. And just like that, she vanished into the expanding darkness. Everything went pitch black, the air heavy with the weight of unbroken bonds, lost promises, and unanswered questions. Then silence, as I was left alone in the abyss, unsure if I had found Clara's baby, if I had made a grave mistake, or if the true nature of this house was even more sinister than I had imagined. I was left with a faint echo of her voice, help her haunting me as the storm raged on outside, with the house once again enveloped in an unsettling silence. As I cradled the fabric tightly in my arms, I narrowly escaped with more questions than answers. But deep down, I knew one thing for certain, would never be the same after this. And whatever had unfolded was far from over. I had entered the heart of darkness, and unanswered mysteries had awakened something inside me, a resolve that would drive me to uncover the truth, no matter where it led.